I want to be a pebble in the shoe of the world.
Namaste. Here we are with the new episode of Portraits of Purpose by RayEthnic. Portraits of Purpose is a monthly feature that celebrates inspiring women who are making a meaningful contribution in their respective fields. Each of this edition highlights the journey, achievements, and vision of these women, showcasing their dedication, leadership, and contribution to the society.
Incredibly hectic because we're building out a bunch of interesting programs at the moment. But what that does mean is that we're working weekends as well at the moment. So it's, but when it's stuff that you really enjoy doing, it's hard to remember that it is work. So it's only when the weekend's up that you finally look up and you're like, damn, that could have gone a little bit differently. Might have been nice to put my feet up a little bit more. No, but it's just been incredibly hectic, but also very fulfilling. So,
what kind of a person do you try to be when no one is watching?
Exactly the kind of person that I want to be when everyone is watching.
Unapologetic.
Full on, yes, but also just inherently decent. By which I mean true to what I stand for. That doesn't alter whether anyone else is around or not, because that's more an inner compass.
Yeah.
So that. No spaces between the two, as far as I'm concerned.
So what was that one point in your life that shaped the person you are today?
That's a very interesting question. I'm not sure that there was one point, but I think that there were several encounters that made it inevitable that I would wind up choosing to do the things that I've wound up doing. One of those was meeting the person who went on to become my PhD guide, Tridib Surud.
Okay.
I first encountered the force of nature that is Dr. Surud when I was still a journalist, which is the capacity in which I got to interview Raza. But while I was a journalist, following up on a story, I'd met Professor Surud. And literally the first time we ever met, in a few minutes, both of us are looking at each other going, we will work on my PhD together, right? Right? And that's, I think, when things began to fall into the shape that they needed to in order for me to get here. So that.
It's been a long journey.
Are you calling me old?
No, I'm not.
Okay, all right.
You think like an old boomer person.
Not a damn boomer.
Chillest person I know.
I'm just an old millennial, thank you. But thanks. But yeah, it's been a long journey. This was in 2000. I met him in 2008. 2009 is when I started working on my PhD. 2010 is when I started teaching in MICA.
Yeah.
So it's been a while. It's been a while. Yeah.
15 years you're in MICA.
Yeah, I think
How does
so.
it feel, 15 years in MICA?
Honestly, I doubt I would have lasted this long anywhere else. And there's something about this place, which you know as well as I do, that holds softly a space for people to become more, not less of themselves.
Yes.
So I don't know if I would have lasted 15 years anywhere else. And I'm in no hurry to leave anytime soon. Yes, let's just go with that.
No, because today when I came to MICA, I just felt like I've never left MICA.
I'm so happy to hear that you still feel that way. Of course, you graduated like 3 minutes ago, so I'm glad that you still feel that way. But
even a lot of others who graduated, say, 2001, 2002.
Can I just point out that people who graduated in the first ever batch, Sid, our director Jaya, still have everything to do with making this place what it's wound up becoming. So.
Just can't, MICA will never leave you.
Oh,
MICA will never leave you.
See, it sounds to me now like you're paraphrasing Hotel California. little bit, no? Check out anytime you like, but you can never leave.
Yeah.
Well, that's the vibe that we're channeling. Yeah. Kuch to hai. There's something about this place, for sure.
So, you are an English literature graduate, and then I think you went ahead and studied culture in UK, and so culture, history, and all of that. So,
yes, culture, history, and all of that.
I mean, semiotics and all of those things in one place. So, in India today, if you look the current situation, the conversations around development are both aspirational and contentious. From smart cities to sustainability.
Absolutely.
You're talking about GDP on one side, and then you're talking about Gandhian values, because you've also worked on Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy, and you have a book as well. So your work on that, it critiques how the moral and cultural dimensions of reform evolved historically. So how do you interpret progress in India of today, where economic acceleration often coexist with the moral and ecological and cultural exhaustion? So how do you see that?
That's a fantastic question. It really, really is. And I don't think I've heard a better summary of my work either. So thank you, because it sounds like you've actually engaged with it. So my problem, it should be clear, is not with the idea of what we call development. My problem is when one particular aspect of it, as you alluded to, the economic dimensions of it, trump everything else. And my argument in the Dandi book is also that we've been really myopic about what development looks like. I focus on Gujarat, but really it's a pan-India story.
Yeah.
My argument is that we've been myopic about how we've considered what true development looks like. We've reduced the idea of development almost exclusively to the development of infrastructure, as opposed to looking at parameters to do with human well-being, just for example. And most definitely, it has always come at the cost of the health and vitality of our ecosystems, which we have considered as externalities to the processes of development, as opposed to recognizing that the environment is quite literally the material basis, not just of economic progress, but also of our ability to have meaningful lives at all. Without clean air, without water, without bare, basic, essential ecosystem services like this, there is no life on this planet. And if everything that we call development has a trade-off comes in the shape of the degradation of these ecosystems, can it really be called development if what we're really doing is rendering impossible future life for those to come after us on this planet? By destroying planetary well-being, we make it impossible for there to be a future for our own species, because we've forgotten that we are nature. We don't exist outside it. We don't exist without it. We are nature.
We are nature. We are part of the ecosystem.
Exactly that.
Yes.
Exactly
so
that.
Coming to your book, in your book, Walking from Dandi in Search of Vikas, and you retrace the route from Dandi to Ahmedabad in
That's
reverse.
correct.
And what first moved you to undertake this walk?
An old man, well, more specifically, the ghost of an old man who lives in my head a fair bit. And I'm obviously talking about an old man called Gandhi. He is the imp or the voice in my head who has continued to have an impact on the way that I determine the contours both of my life, but also my role in a wider society. I started reading Gandhi many years ago, seriously only after I met Tridip, my guide, who remains one of the finest Gandhi scholars that we have in this country today. And I became very curious about what remained of Gandhian thought and legacy in Gujarat, which was really, in so many ways, such a huge part of his karma bhumi, or his conception of a karma bhumi. So towards the 90th anniversary of the Dandi March, I decided that I had to walk that route so that I could ask the people who live there today, Tamara માટે વિકાસ એટલે શું? Tamara માટે સ્વરાજ એટલે શું? I wanted to see whether they had any cultural memories that they may have inherited of the Salt March. So everywhere I went, I would ask people whether they had grown up with stories about what had happened when the original marchers went through their village. You know, places where they stopped for the night. And in some places, I'd be told things like, oh, yeah, that person's grandparents were part of the people who put together the meal for the thousands of people who were here alongside the 80 marchers. Or this is where they stayed. Or in some villages, they would tell me things like, this is where we hid them. And I'd be like, but nobody was hiding on the march. So I know that something is historically inaccurate, but it almost didn't matter because I got really curious about why places and people tell the stories they tell. Like, what does it mean for a village? Banj is the name of the village, if you're interested, in South Gujarat. Where they repeated the same story for the past 90 years, that this is where we hid him when the police came to arrest him. Now, historically, we know that Gandhi is literally seeking arrest from the beginning of the march to the end of it, right? But this village, what is the sense of itself and its role that emerges when they tell this story to anybody who asks? This is the house in which we hid him. This is where we did what we did. So it was drawing a portrait of modern Gujarat to see whether there were continuities in cultural memory and legacy, but equally trying to chart what we talk about when we talk about this term that sits so closely with the Gujarat story, Vikas.
Yeah.
So I wanted to hear from people that I have no occasion to meet in my daily life. I wanted to hear from them, ki tamara માટે વિકાસ એટલે શું? મને બતાવો. Quite literally, what does Vikas mean to you? Can you show me? And in some places, people would point to a huge new bus depot and be like, "Jo aa Vikas chhe." In some places, people would point to a functioning post office and tell me, "Aa Vikas chhe." Now, all of this is giving me a sense of what matters to people. And I'm also hearing equally from people that amara માટે વિકાસ નથી. વિકાસ તો બીજા લોકો માટે હોય. It has left us behind. So the haves and the have-nots, inequality, all the things that have preoccupied, my understanding of this moment in space and time were themes that I was hearing from just asking people simple questions like this. So that is what that book turned into.
400 kilometers?
Roughly that. Yeah, about that. Exactly as long as the marchers originally walked. Except they were walking to Dandi, which was their future. I flipped the route because the way that I conceive of it, Dandi and Swaraj are sadly our distant past. And Ahmedabad, the city that Vikas built, is the present and a sense of the future. So if they were walking towards the future, I had to walk towards the future. And which is why we had to flip the script and we had to flip the route. So we walked into Ahmedabad, and it took us exactly as long as it took the original marchers. It was approximately 400 kilometers, and I had two fabulous people walking with me, dear friends, Sushmit and Chirag, one of whom is your super senior from Micah, as you know. And together we asked a lot of questions, and we kept each other going, and we walked. So that.
Really inspiring, this journey. So in a world of speed and instant gratification,
yes,
right? So do you think slowness, the kind of walk that you did for your book, was a form of purpose
and protest? Yes.
So what did you carry back from the walk, not in your bag but in your, say, memories?
In my life, the walk, I think the book ends on this note, and I don't mean it as a metaphor at all. I don't think I walked the walk. I think the walk keeps walking me. I mean it. I mean it in every sense of the term. Walking is how I know the world, but walking is also how I think the world that I live in acquires a sense of me. I continue to walk copious amounts every day, and it has become my method. I feel like the slowness that you pick up on is exactly why in Gandhi's conceptualizing of modernity, he said part of what we were losing was our connection to space-place because of speed. And that speed, in Hind Swaraj, he talks about how as you move from walking to the bullock cart, you've already lost something. As you move from the bullock cart to the train, you are losing something quite else. And all of us know what comes after the train, right? With air travel, the world has become a much smaller place than ever it used to be. And while that comes with a certain set of benefits, I find it also useful to ask questions about what we lose in the process. And what we lose is the intimate ways in which our bodies understood that we were a part of nature, because we were affected by the cycles of day, night, seasons, going as far as our feet could take us and letting that be the scope of our action. We lost all of that. So when you embrace walking, what you're really doing is protesting against the hustle culture that modernity valorizes. You're protesting the need to be endlessly productive without asking, but for what and to whom. You're also resisting every aspect of the life that we have built for ourselves that demands a constant, immediate performance that results in instant gratification. And you push all of that just a little bit further when you say, no, actually, I think I want to slow things right down, because as human beings, this is the space, the speed, and the scale I can actually understand the world with. So it's a form of protest.
So if that journey, say, were a piece of fabric, okay, so what texture or color would it have?
I love the textile metaphor there. Also, because even before we get to what it feels like and what it looks like, just the idea of the warp and the weft, the idea of the creation, the idea of the loom. I mean, can you think of anything more tactile, intimate, slow, and considerate? It's just, when you're trying to read culture, when you're trying to read the world, there are so many strands. And in your analysis, you both weave them together as well as deconstruct them so that you can better see every piece, even though you remember that you have to put it back together again, because otherwise you're only getting half the story. But if this act had to have a color, you know what it's going to be? Ochre. Ochre, like a deep earth tone, because I don't think I've ever experienced, a couple of different reasons, this much sunlight from just walking all day, every day, but seeing what the sun does to earth and seeing what that earth in turn is doing to me. Experiencing the difference between walking down a tree-lined avenue and a space where all those trees have been cut because you now have plantations and fields that run literally to the edge of the rasta. Knowing the difference between what your feet feel like when they're walking on a dirt track and when they're compelled to walk on gravel roads. So I'm going to go with like a deep ochre, which is in my head indelibly the color of earth, wet earth. Yeah, that. What does it feel like? It feels like khadi, man.
Yeah.
Of course it feels like khadi. It's got obviously the handmadeness of the entire process, which takes time, is therefore slow, considered, deliberate. It can feel a little bit rough, but it can also be a reminder of everything worth fighting for. And sometimes you need the rough against the smooth in order to remember that creativity comes from friction. So, right.
Wow. So articulate.
But it was a really beautiful question.
So you are a feminist, like we all know.
Who isn't at this point?
Yeah.
And if they're not, let them come to my class for free.
So coming to women empowerment, I think we have had those classes as well in Imagining India. So today, empowerment is both a lived experience and a market narrative as well. And it is visible.
Pinkwashing plus.
Yeah.
Yes,
and
yes.
it is visible in advertising and
Of
fashion
course.
and media discourse.
That's
So
true.
brands, including say ours as well. So we often walk the line between celebrating women and commercializing their independence.
Yeah.
So how do you view the intersection of gender, identity and commerce, especially when empowerment becomes a brand language? And where do you see the tension between authenticity and this performance?
I could come at this in a few different ways. One of which is to just problematize what we mean by authenticity. That's number one. What is authenticity? I'm not entirely sure it's a single story.
It is not.
Right? It can't be. Especially because you bring up intersectionality.
Yeah.
And each of us is compelled to reckon with the fact that identity is, if it's not a single story, if who I am is a function of my location in caste, class, gender, religion, and other networks from which I derive meaning, then what does authenticity look like in a given context? So in the context of commercial spaces, which is what I hear you kind of bring this brand piece into, what does that mean? Am I honoring the capacity of the woman creator, designer, artisan, maker, while I am trying to make her self-sufficient financially in meeting her needs? In that case, what does honoring that contribution to commerce look like? That, I think, would be an authentic kind of iteration in that capacity. Do all brands intend to do that? I'm not sure. I think we've got enough examples and more of, things like during Pride Month, suddenly everybody and their uncles and their aunts jump onto the bandwagon, and literally the second Pride Month is over, all the color disappears. मतलब वो क्या होता है? That to me is tokenism. An authentic espousal where you build what you were talking about into your business model, where you build businesses that are regenerative by design, I think would be authentic iterations within a commercial space, which navigate everything. If you're celebrating women through your comms, through your marketing, that to me is not enough. Are you creating empowered agents because of your business model? Are they stakeholders in every decision that you are making? And are you replenishing equally what you are taking from the material basis of your business? Are you paying attention to your ecological footprint and figuring that into your very idea of what a modern, forward-facing, future-facing business can look like? To me, those are the spaces worth exploring. If you want to be an authentic thought leader in the business of the future, and if you want to celebrate what each person, regardless of all their other identity markers, brings into the crafting of this space. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, because RayEthnic, we have over 1,000 plus women artisans who are associated with us currently. Some of them have been working with us for the last 15 years
as
well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
And it had actually started out as a self-help group initially.
So then you can see what the trajectory that is.
Yeah, and it has always been a very women-focused women's wear brand.
Led by
Rinku Patel. She's our founder. And also even the kind of clothing that we make, our first priority is the comfort and also all body types, because Indian body types are
fantastic.
very different from what we see in the West
or other places in general. Let's say,
well, the mass brands. So I think the focus, the core has always been the women. And Yeah.
No, I love the sound of that. I didn't know about the brand until we spoke, obviously, but no, I love the sound of that. And I also didn't know about the origins in the self-help groups.
Yeah.
In that space, which automatically, by definition, is all about a certain kind of economic empowerment.
Yeah.
I hope that that's where it begins, but that's not where it ends.
Yeah, it actually began with that. So it was during the early 2000s when there was some recession that was going on here, and a lot of these artisans, their husbands were associated with the diamond merchants.
Sure.
So
yeah. So volatile industries, really.
Women were jobless, and that's when our founder, she came up with this group. But at that point of time, her intention was never to build a brand.
Yeah, I get it.
Her intention was to just help these women out.
So if the brand is the byproduct of this,
brand is the byproduct.
Then you know that it hasn't been socially engineered to capitalize on the fact that brands right now seem to love celebrating, all kinds of things.
Even now also, in most of our marketing decision or strategic decision, we kind of keep, the capitalism a little bit, we mellow that down because the core value is still helping the artist.
So if it's human-centric, is what I'm hearing. Add an eco-centric lens and you have yourselves the possibility of becoming a regenerative business of the future. Because that is something that you have to think about. Materiality.
Yeah.
We can't decouple economic growth from the fact that, we're using material, natural resources. But that sounds really exciting.
Yeah. So, you have worked as a semiotician.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, decoding the cultural meanings behind luxury and intimacy.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we also had the interview about intimacy. Yeah. So, we now live in a moment where aspiration and, like you said, authenticity coexist uneasily, whether in luxury branding or influencer culture, or even social movements online.
Yeah,
so
sure.
How do you see meaning being made today in a society where consumption itself has become a language?
The value, the dominant value, right? The consumption is where we live in a consumer culture.
Yeah.
So absolutely bang on. What an excellent question. I wish I had an answer. I do not. And here is why. Never before have we had to contend with the fact that this thing that has been so thoroughly human that we've used for meaning making, aka language, never before have we had to contend with the fact that we were the only species that uses this. We currently live in a space and time where I can no longer say with any certainty whether the linguistic output I am engaging with is of human creation or not. And that has been an enormous, enormous challenge to, going back to our conversation earlier, authenticity when it comes to thinking about how we use language to make meaning.
Yeah.
Right? So one of the biggest questions about meaning making in general at the moment, before we kind of focus on the fact that consumer cultures are at the core of how we seem to imagine society these days. I could talk you through a historical shift where the producer used to be the patriot in the Indian imagination, and today the consumer is the patriot, right? We're being asked to consume Swadeshi, not produce Swadeshi, just as one example. But that does not answer your question. The trouble that, as a semiotician, I'm having at the moment is that we seem to be losing our warehouse of stories in common. Because you'll remember that part of what we said was vital for any community to continue to make meaning was a warehouse of things that gave us our a prioris, or the bits that we take as our starting points. We seem to be losing those stories in common. And when we lose those stories in common, the first thing to break down will be communicative acts. We will no longer be able to speak the same language, even though we're speaking the same language. And what is exacerbating that, obviously, is what I was talking about earlier, which is generative AI and everywhere we go from there. Meaning making and narration go hand in hand. Language is predominantly the tool that human beings have used to make meaning between themselves. And any shift in language is going to necessarily mean that we're going to have to start from scratch again, thinking about how meaning is currently being made. We will constantly find meaning in either rituals, practices, various different things. And at the moment, part of that ritualized act of consumption is something that we have lived with for the better part of, I'd argue, at least post-World War II, as we kind of from the 50s onwards careen into a space where consumer cultures begin to become the heart of how we imagine society. But I'm quite certain that right now the wise move for anybody who is a social observer, which is what a semiotician is in some senses, right? We're constantly trying to understand who we are, where we are, and not just what something means, but how it means what it means. I have a feeling the wise move for anybody right now is to shut up and just watch. Because honestly, we seem to be at a moment of deep existential flux, where what is at stake is quite literally being able to define what it will mean to be human in a world where generative AI is going to be able to do a lot of things that so far we thought we were the only species on this planet could do. So the wise move is to shut up and not forward an ill thought through answer that can only ever be half baked as of now. So I will shut up.
So at RayEthnic, we often think of clothing not just as a fashion, like I was saying this to you, but as a narrative, memory, heritage, and individuality.
Love it.
So as someone who studies how symbols communicate, what story do you think Indian women's clothing tells today about, say, freedom or tradition or the space between the two?
I think you already know what my response is going to be. No, which Indian woman? There are as many Indian women as there are women in India, right? And the choices that each of these women makes is something very particular, in a sense, to her. What she chooses to say. There are eras during which I have chosen hand-woven fabrics exclusively almost, because I know that that kind of slow deliberation is of a larger piece with the rest of the things that I'm thinking through in my life. Now, clothing and freedom depends on whose freedom we're talking about. Depends on who I am when I enter the calculus of choosing every visual marker that will make you read me in a particular way, right? And so depending on how old I am, depending on who else is around me, depending on, my social caste, class, location, depending on my religious identity, different items of clothing are going to do that signaling work that you're asking about. So I don't know if there is a one-size-fits-all answer there. So I can only answer for myself. Freedom comes from exactly the core value of what you were talking about, which is comfort. Making sure that you're equipped in a fabric that breathes when you live in a climate like ours, to make sure that you're not uncomfortable or constantly thinking about this throughout the day, because man, I have other things to worry about. Like I have curriculums to design and classes to teach, so I can't be overly fussed about that. But definitely mindful of the long textile imagination that is such a core part of one of the older, more widely shared spaces in India, which is clothing and textiles. Mindful that there is, as we were discussing earlier, a really fluid space between art and craft imaginations when it comes to textiles. Mindful also that in India, the idea of the artist or the designer as an individual is only a very recent provenance, because you had people, there were just like you didn't have individual musicians, music was something that everybody made, even though you may have people who sound slightly more in swoop than others. The art and craft space is traditionally something that we've thought about and valorized in the collective imagination, as opposed to exclusively making it about a designer or an artist. And every time I reach for something that is handmade, handwoven, I'm reminding myself that it stems from community, and that ultimately is also an antidote to the deep loneliness of modernity. So all of that.
Deep loneliness of modernity. What a beautiful line. You are also a climate activist.
If you say so.
Now that your upcoming book, I think it's on eco-philosophy, something related to that. And it arrives at a moment where climate and consumption crisis,
where the natural world is dying.
Yeah, they are overlapping. So the fashion and lifestyle industries too are questioning speed, waste, and excess.
Good.
So
about time.
Yeah, they're questioning about it. No, we don't know whether are they even doing anything about it or not. It's a party back there. So how do you think aesthetic choices, what we wear, buy, or produce, can align with ethical and ecological consciousness without becoming a performative greenwashing?
I think you already answered that for both of us when you spoke about slowness. Slow fashion, recognizing that perhaps what the fashion of the future is going to look like is something that is timeless. Abandoning this idea that I need to constantly reach for the next big thing because I have that one beautiful iteration. That one beautiful iteration is enough for me. An antidote to the fast-paced, constant performativity that is a hallmark of consumer culture. So even thinking about a fashion line that drops every few months, these are indicative of old ways of thinking about economic activities decoupled from material resource. The moment you start thinking about slow fashion, you're compelled to pay as much attention to materiality, the natural use of resource, as you are to the people who are compelled to create it. No amount of branding or comms that are targeted at me is enough to make somebody, or should be enough to make somebody reach for fast fashion when we know the toll that it takes on the sweatshop workers who are compelled to churn out things at breakneck speed, and the kind of waste that they generate, and the kind of unthinking use of resource and water that goes into their manufacturing. So the only antidote that I can really think of would necessarily come in the form of really expanding and embracing the idea of slowness that has been the thematic that connects literally everything we've discussed so far.
So when you look at your journey,
make it sound like my life is over only. What even? My journey.
It's been a long time.
Thanks, yaar.
So when you look at your journey from journalism to academia, from reform history to semiotics, what threads of purpose tie it all together?
I want to be a pebble in the shoe of the world. That's what I said to my therapist when she asked what my purpose was. And I stand by that answer. So through all the work I have ever done, through every class I have ever taught, and through every book I ever write, all I want to do is trouble the ease with which we think we understand the world, as if it was simple, as if it were any one thing. So that is the common thread that runs through everything.
Beautiful.
You like it, really?
Yeah, I really
My therapist also liked it.
So if your portrait were to capture one moment, one idea, one feeling that defines you today, what would that be?
It can be 200 expressions flitting through one set of eyes in roughly 1 minute.
Oh.
That.
Okay.
Because I think stillness is beautiful and I aspire towards it. But right now, to understand a world in so much flux, I kind of feel like the only way that I'm able to do it is by trying to look at everything everywhere all at once. So 200 expressions as my mind races through 15 million things, literally every minute. I don't know. I think it sounds slightly unhinged, but that is what is
So
true.
if your life was a book, what chapter are you in right now?
Ayo. Okay. The end of summer. So if my life were a book, it would obviously have to mimic seasons, which at the moment we can't take for granted because climate change. But say for a moment that we still have seasons, then late summer, kind of getting towards the most beautiful season of all in some parts of the world where they have it, autumn, but late summer. So we're like at the midpoint of the journey, I would feel. I'd like to believe that that's where we are. I don't know, but that's what I think.
Sweet. And as someone who's navigating academia, you also do, I think, consulting as well.
Only in places with projects that don't hurt my soul. So I've only ever consulted twice, and both of them only with my friend Chirag, who runs Fresh Think,
Yes.
who do A, beautiful cultural research, and B, who only take on projects that don't hurt our hearts, minds, and souls. So those are the only two projects I've ever agreed to consult on, and I think that's how it will stay. So I don't actually do much industry consulting.
I mean, what does, see, you're also writing a book.
Yeah.
You're also traveling.
Yeah.
And
for work.
yeah,
and
for
also
work.
to meet
And
my
also
nephew.
vacation.
Yeah, but I mean, vacation, no. To go meet the love of my life, who is 2.5 years old, 2.5 feet tall, and is my nephew. So if I'm not here, and if I'm not working, which is rare, I'm with my nephew. Yeah.
So what does balance mean to you as a woman? You're juggling everything.
It means a lot. It's aspirational. I don't know that I have it. But yeah, it's aspirational. I managed to, but also let me be slightly more honest. Balance to me looks like being sometimes able to set firm boundaries on how much I say yes to. Just because a project is deeply intellectually exciting doesn't mean that I say yes to it. If I know I simply don't have the bandwidth, or if it's going to interfere with my time with my nephew, or my time with the trees. So balance to me looks like acquiring and cultivating the ability to sometimes say no, even to things that I think sound really exciting.
So how do you express your individuality through what you do or what you wear? How do you express?
I don't know that I necessarily do it through what I wear. Even though, like I said, I have definitely become far more interested in just the materiality of textiles and where they come from. So lots of hand woven stuff, the idea of the human hand that has, and honoring the human hand that has put something beautiful on my body is something that I value a great deal. By expressing myself largely through the choices that I make, through what I say yes to, and to what I say no to also, right? Like not consulting on everything. This as just one obvious example.
Yeah.
Surrounding myself with things that remind me that there is beauty in the world and remind me constantly of what I fight for, not just what I fight against. So that.
Beautiful. So if your wardrobe could speak, what story would it tell?
It would talk about utter chaos, and it would tell you, help, I'm a beautiful piece. I've been trapped in this woman's cupboard for a very long time. She hasn't opened her cupboard in a very long time. She just, recycles the 20 things that are outside in her room and is like, theek hai, aaj mere paas time nahi hai, main ye pehnungi, type of thing. My wardrobe is actually very khafa with me for not spending enough time organizing it.
You're messy.
And other things. So messy.
High five to that.
So messy. So messy. But yeah, my wardrobe would A, complain about me, but B, it would also say, I quite like that coat. Or I quite like this shirt. Or I quite like some of the things she has. I just wish she took more of an interest and spent more time appreciating us. So that, I think, is what my motto would say.
Lovely interview. One last question.
It wasn't an interview. We were just
interview.
hanging out.
Yeah, it
Yes,
was more
okay.
like a hangout. So when you look back years from now, what do you hope people remember you for?
Pebble, shoe. Pebble,
I'm
shoe.
going to remember you for that, Pebble. Now that you've told me,
There you go.
Remember you
And
for
now
that.
think back to class and tell me if it worked. Have I been a pebble in your shoe in some capacity?
Of course.
Best of it.
I mean,
Ho
one of
gaya.
my key